Welcome, Self-Made Nation, CEO, founder, business owners, to the Cash Rich Exit podcast. I'm Colleen O'Connell-Campbell, wealth advisor at RBC Dominion Securities, and your host. Today's episode tackles a very harsh truth. The harsh truth that many, maybe even most business owners never actually sell their business. And is that you? These business owners instead are quietly closing their doors, leaving decades of effort and equity on the table, but not under today's guest's watch. Markian is an entrepreneur, small business owner, investor, and creator of Exits Method. With first-hand experience as a buyer, advisor, and owner, he is on a mission to help service-based, operations-heavy business owners, some you might call blue-collar or Main Street businesses, build sellable, transferable companies that don't close or die when they retire. We're talking myths, mistakes, and mindset. And if you want to know how to actually sell your business for what it's worth, this one, it's for you. And by the way, if you're ready to explore what your exit might look like, let's have a conversation. Reach out for your one-on-one wealth gap analysis. Now, let's meet Markian. So, Self-Made Nation, I'd like to introduce you to our guest today, Markian Pergat. Great to have you on the show today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Colleen. Happy to be here.
Like so many of my guests, I believe we connected through LinkedIn initially in some way, shape, or form, and had some conversation. And you've got a story to tell, and you've got some advice for the audience. So why don't we start here by just giving some context and a little bit about your background, your professional background.
Sure. I've been more or less self-employed since I was 19 years old. And I guess things really kicked off when I was going to college for the small medium business entrepreneurship program. And I didn't want to just read the book on business. I wanted to actually get some experience with that as well. I enrolled into the student painting business. There's many of them, but this one was College Pro Painters. So there's quite a list of alumni out there. And I really enjoyed it. I did quite well in that first year. I got the Rookie of the Year award for um, the Eastern Ontario division over here. So that was fine. And the President's Award, that kind of thing. They take you to Bahamas to present the awards, or I'm sure every year it's a different place. So that was good. And then I just kind of continued down that path. I really like the small business ownership world, and I guess I didn't sign up for the business for the painting specifically. It was more the business part that I wanted to
Mhm,
learn. But again, I kind of really learned to love the trades and blue collar style business as well. So
So that's kind of the genesis of, if we look back over time, what sort of the journey to get us to where we are today, right? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's one of the big ones. So
And what are your hands into these days?
yeah, so similar model to that student painting business. I have my own company called Sand and Stain here in Ottawa, and we do wood restoration and maintenance. So um, the culture did a great job of teaching us how to paint, but they didn't do a great job teaching us how to do the wood restoration. So a lot of people have a wood deck or a wood fence, maybe a wooden gazebo or shed or something. And so I didn't love seeing how those would peel all the time, and they last one winter and they start peeling.
Hmm.
So the typical entrepreneur in me comes out and says, okay, here's a problem, I got to solve it. So I basically just uh, went through the experimenting like many of us do to try to figure out how to do this properly. So I didn't invent the best way to do it, of course, but I just kind of discovered on my own through two things. Basically, the best process, so using the proper restoration methods, so sanding right back down to bare wood, not using pressure washers and other methods and chemicals and things, and then the right product. So it's a true penetrating oil stain versus I know they all say they penetrate or absorb, but they don't. Anyways, so then I was boldly putting my marketing out there as my slogan says, "Never peel again," and everyone says, "I don't believe you." You know, yeah, it's not gonna peel. So
Right.
so uh, so of course after the proof of concept, it kind of took off. So I still own that business today. It's great. Um, and the longer I own it, the more I kind of enjoy it because I guess for a few reasons, but for one, it doesn't peel as said, but it does fade. So from a business context, the way to get rid of the fading is to kind of just do the maintenance parts. So we kind of come every year or every two as the floor needs more staining, and then for a business, it's nice to have that sort of repeat business as opposed to the other methods that I didn't approve of, where you pay a bunch of money and it lasts for not even it lasts for the rest of the season. By next April, when the snow melts, it still looks bad.
Hmm.
um, and then so they're turned off from the idea, and they don't want to do it again for another 4 or 5 years until they can't handle it anymore, and then they do it again, and they're in this endless
In this
endless
endless
situation. Looks
cycle, right?
so that's that, but it is a seasonal business. So I have, quite a bit of time in the winter to kind of do other projects. So yes, I still do marketing and emails, that sort of thing, and pre-sales. But I've just been absolutely fascinated with the I guess they call it the silver tsunami, the baby boomers
Hmm.
that are still owning, I think it's about half the businesses out there still. And so those need to change hand eventually. And they've been already doing that, and they will be continuing to do that for the next little while. So with my operating experience for the last almost 2 decades, I just think could be a great sort of next step, and say, okay, I've got this operating experience. If I wanted to help these owners, have a transition, because the stats also say that 80% of these businesses never actually transition, never change hands. So
Hmm.
that kind of breaks my heart as an entrepreneur, thinking, geez, these people, work their whole lives, and then at the end of their career, they don't really get that final bang, that final payday, or even just the legacy play. They don't get to kind of, they can be proud of what they did, but there's a whole different feeling whenever they exit and they see that their business continues even after they've left. So A, it's the opportunity, but B, I just from a more of a personal touch, I would love to see these people get proper exits.
Yeah, it is a real harsh reality, and certainly here on the podcast, the Cash Rich Exit podcast, where I'm promoting that idea of getting a nice reward for all of the lifetime of uh, blood, sweat, and tears, time, people, and money put into building a business. Ideally, it's become an asset, right? So to that point, that's really like where we want to go next on this conversation here today is as a result of your experience and what you've seen out there, you've built a method that you are rolling out as part of your goal to help more business owners find this legacy, this next step. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what that looks like?
Sure, yeah, I appreciate that. So, conveniently, it's called the exits method. So that is an acronym. So the E stands for equanimity, which is basically all the emotional and mindset that goes with it. So it's a very emotional
Hmm.
thing to part with your business, and even if you're not a business owner, if you've done a job for a very long time, and you become attached to maybe the title or the roles, or just people maybe put their own self-worth into their work or what they're doing. It's very, very difficult to kind of get rid of that. So it's definitely getting the proper thought process and the emotional piece to get out of that. So that's the E. The X stands for X factor. So this just puts you on a completely different map, where when you're looking at businesses, again, such a small percent actually sell, but an even small percent do kind of these M&A plays. So for me, it really puts a business out on top if they're able to either merge or buy another company. So
Mm.
that's a great way to also raise value. Often when you're having a conversation saying, "What's my business worth? I want to retire," and then they say, "Okay," uh, they may be disappointed with the valuation not being as high as what they'd like. So instead of growing organically, which might take years, which they should be doing anyways, but they've been doing that their whole their whole business career. One way to maybe to get the numbers quite a bit higher, and they can potentially double their business overnight, is to merge with a competitor or buy another business. So that's the X. The I stands for independence. So this is basically separating the owner from the business. So again,
Mhm.
it's very often that the business can't function without the owner, and this is arguably one of the biggest reasons that I've seen that blocks an owner from an exit.
This comes up on a regular basis in conversations here on the podcast is the dependence on the founder and the difference in value that can be created when you can separate that.
That's exactly right, and
Mhm.
and often this is I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I mean, a lot of people think they have a business, but they don't. They're actually just, they're just self-employed. And I don't mean to say just meaning that's a bad thing. That's
Mhm.
absolutely fine if they know that's what it is, and if they can make a pile of money, but they might. But just understand that, hey, you're probably not going to get an exit, and that's okay. But just know that, don't be disappointed later if you set your, if you set your life up as a wealthy self-employed person. There's nothing wrong with that. And self-employed people can still have, helpers or maybe, some employees, but it's not, but again, it's not a business in its true sense, right? So yeah, so that's the I for the independence,
Mhm.
and also independence on all the fronts. So the biggest one is the owner, but you want to be not overly excuse me, you want to be overly independent on any employee or any supplier or anything else.
Right.
So there's key man risk and all the rest of it. So
Mhm.
basically independence in all the fronts. So so
Mhm.
that's um, so that's the I. The T stands for transferability. So this is where all the value levers that you can pull to make your business more valuable, and systems, that sort of thing, come into play. So yes, the independence is one of them, but it's such a big one that I knew I had to separate it and make it its own thing
Right.
because it's such an important one. But basically, yeah, there's a million things, and again, I'd have to look at a business specifically to see what it might need.
Mhm.
But there's an infinite number of things you could do on that. But basically, just to come with some examples, if your business doesn't have recurring revenue, you might want to consider doing that. That's going to be a lot easier for
Mhm.
for a buyer to get excited about paying you for that, because they see that as soon as you leave, there's already a list of customers that are already paying you month to month or year over year. So that's
Created
that's
an
one big.
annuity of revenue,
That's
right?
exactly
Like
right. So
continuity and annuity. Hmm.
that's exactly right. So, and again, there's so many to go through, but that's kind of like on an individual basis to kind of see, because inherently a service business is going to have strengths and weaknesses that are maybe a product business won't, and vice versa. But again, a lot of things we can go through there, but that's more of
Hmm.
going deeper into the weeds of the business. And lastly, we have S for strategy. So that. That's basically having as many exit options as you possibly can, because it's fine and good to have a plan, but especially in a very fast-paced AI world that we live in now, by the time the ink dries on your plan, it's probably going to be obsolete. And there's just so many unexpected life events or business events that could happen. So your whole business could get disrupted for one. So I mean, if you were a taxi cab driver when Uber came around, like, you maybe at the
Hmm.
first didn't take it seriously, and then very, very quickly it just sort of took over. Same thing with Airbnb, and if you're a hotel or whatever. So the industry can come around, the government could change regulation. You yourself personally could experience some life change or a health crisis or something. So at any point in time, anything unexpected to happen. So it's not about having a perfect ideal plan. It's about having as many kind of ways out and exit
Right.
pathways as you possibly can. So that's the five. That's the five very quickly. And what they each mean.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. And the role of the independence piece that it, like like to talk about that for a little bit. I mean, in a sort of main street or trades oriented business, which is where you have a soft spot to support business owners, uh, it it's I think even more prevalent than say, a tech startup or some other business like that, because oftentimes these businesses start from a technical self-employment situation and then morph out, right? So I think it bears, we can dig into that one a little bit more. Like what would be uh, like how would you work with the business owner? Like what might be a first step that you might take them through if you're diving into that piece?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Colleen, you actually nailed it yourself when you said they're technical minded. They are probably, top 1% at what they do. They're probably extremely good at the technical piece. So let's use something like specific as an example. So if you were if you're an electrician, let's say,
Hmm.
and maybe you started working at an electrical company before you went off and started your own business, you would have had to learn the trade, get good at it, and then you can kind of say, okay, maybe I want to do this on my own, or for whatever reasons, you want to go off on your own. But point is, you started off as an electrician. So absolutely, you can become a strong business owner and still have a proper exit with all these things in place. But most of the time, they're just thinking with a technician mind, saying, "Hey, I can do this
Hmm.
better on my own." And they're thinking about the skill. But when you're running a business, that's the skill. You're building the business assets, and you're making this system of systems run without you. That is the skill when you're running a
Hmm.
business versus when you're this electrician in this example, you're just doing the best job. You're just doing the best job at that. So again, I'm not going to suggest that one is better than the other. They're just different. So
They're
you just
just
need to know
different.
which
Yeah.
lane you're in. Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And in my standpoint, I love it when I find someone who's extremely technically savvy, but maybe less so on the business front, because that's where I can come into place. So just a reminder to earlier when I was talking about the painting business where I learned
Well, I was
from.
going to say
Yeah.
you would have a very practical experience in the business that you've created.
Well, that's exactly it. And again, like even when I started with that franchise, I never went for the painting. I went for the business experience, which
Mhm.
that's where my core and crux is. And now I have, like I said, almost 2 decades of operating experience. So I like having that empathy where I know what they're thinking. I know, I done a lot of the, the physical labor part of the work too. So I get how that goes. So it's very instrumental to know what everyone's thinking, so you can kind of do the best to kind of help all parties, if that makes sense. But like I said, I think that's the biggest piece. They're not thinking like a business owner. And then if we specifically look at exits, you really need to think like a buyer. And why is that so important? Because in your business, you maybe need to think like your customer. So if you're serving homeowners, you got to think, okay, what is the homeowner thinking? I have a problem
Mhm.
in my house. I need to get this fixed. I got to get this fixed right away. So then you just, and then because you're thinking like that, okay, if I was a homeowner, I'd want fast service, or I'd want to have someone who treats me fairly. I want someone who's honest. So then you put those things into your business. But when you're looking at exitability, let's say, your customer now is your buyer. So you have to put yourself in their headspace and say, well, what does a buyer want? What do they want to have? And if they see that, your business is basically mostly you, and if you left, it wouldn't continue running, or they see that you're running it as like a glorified, basically a self-employed, person who's very high in the technical skill front, but maybe not doing the business building as they should be, then it becomes difficult to serve that customer, which is your prospective buyer. So I know there's a lot to unpack there, but that's
Mhm.
that's a lot of the what I see happening very
Yeah.
commonly that happens.
Yeah. How did you navigate that yourself in terms of the business that you have now? You're obviously you are investing in businesses yourself, as part of growing a portfolio of companies. You are writing a book. You've got this advisory piece, but you also still own the business. So you somehow managed to kind of take that next level up from actually doing the work. How did you can you share a little bit about how you got there? Was it going back to that E of exit? Was it like a mindset shift?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can tell you exactly where it started, and it didn't happen overnight for sure. So, like I said, I definitely was wearing all the hats, just like many of us were when I started
Hmm.
my business. I was doing all the sales, doing all the production, all the emails. I mean, it was the one man show. So that's why again I'm very empathetic for these people that are doing all this work. So the problem with that, I mean, there's many problems, but it's so easy to become overworked, and then you become frustrated because you're burnt out, and then it's unsustainable, and you think, even though this is a seasonal business,
Hmm.
well, I mean, like, hell, I needed those 8 months off in the winter to kind of, like, come back from everything, because it's like
Right.
you're basically killing yourself in the summer. And I remember having those nights where you sleep for 5 hours a night because you have to, you're you're getting up first thing in the morning. You got to be the first one to the store before your competitor is, or whatever, and then you got to work all day, and it gets you go as late as you possibly can, to where it's maybe inappropriate to contact a customer any later than that. And you finally come home and then you do you start doing your emails, because you weren't doing emails all day, you were out doing the work. So then you got to
Hmm.
do emails for the next 2 3 hours and play catch up.
Right. It's just
So
exhausting listening to it, right?
Oh God, it was awful. Yeah, so I hated it. So yeah, so to the moment that I said, okay, I've had enough. This is awful. I'm done with this. I literally drove down to the local broker and said, okay, I want to sell this thing. I hate this. This is awful. And of course, they more or less said, look, like, there's, it's going to be hard for you to sell this, because you're doing so much of this on your own. And basically, I got that news, and this is the news I have to deliver to people, which is not great. It's not fun to have, but you need to have that shake up. You need to have that moment where someone tells you, hey, this is, you got to kind of do these things. So from that moment on, I basically just made it my project and said, okay, how do I make this thing run without me? How do I make this thing sellable, or how do I make this thing, something that could eventually have an exit should I want it? Because at this moment right now, basically it's worthless, let's say. So it was that journey, and then it took years, but I would say probably about four years after that point, I got it to the point where I had fired myself from all the positions. I have a person who's taking care of sales, person who's taking care of the production, all the
Hmm.
technicians, some in the back office, kind of doing all that sort of work. And now my full-time job for that business specifically is just making business assets to make sales even easier, to make production even easier, and just how to make this even more efficient. So one huge thing that we did was, instead of going to someone's house, which was kind of like the way I used to do it, to give a quote. A quote might take an hour by the time you talk to the person, and kind of measure your stuff, and and do the sales presentation. So let's just say it takes an hour. If you're driving all over the city, you can maybe only do eight to
Hmm.
10 quotes in a day. So then we made an online calculator where we can now do a quote in a couple of minutes. Now you can easily do 100 quotes in a day if you want, which is great for our seasonal business, where all the demand kind of shows up in at the beginning of the
Hmm.
season, where there's 2 months of people. And then I was worried that like, we'd lose rapport and maybe sales would drop, but
Hmm.
the opposite happened. We sold more than we ever did from that point on, because of the speed to the lead. If I can say, hey, I can get you a quote, right away, just give me a couple of pictures and some measurements, and I'll give you the
Hmm.
quote immediately. Um, and that just got us first to the door, as opposed to, oh yeah, yeah, I'll be in Orleans next week because I just went to Orleans yesterday. I can't go to Orleans every day. I got to do the rest of the city. And then by then they've sold to your
Somebody
competitor,
else, right?
who's in Orleans, and you lose all these jobs.
Hmm.
So anyway, so that is an example of,
There you
pulling a little
go.
lever to make it more efficient, make it better. So basically, yeah, I had that moment where I had the wake up call where, it's unsustainable. I can't do this, and I don't like it. And then it went to this point where now I would say, I haven't tried to sell the business, but I would say it's probably sellable, because I'm barely there. I mean, yes, I take a little bit of time to prepare because it is seasonal. So, like, I work, let's just say, hard in that business for maybe a month to 6 weeks at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the season, I should say, to get it started up. But after that, it's fairly hands off. So now that it is quote unquote sellable, let's say,
You
I
actually
don't I
don't
don't
want to
want.
sell it.
Yeah, yeah, of course,
It's
yeah.
the irony, right?
That's the irony. So there's that piece too, and that's another reason why, when I'm helping these owners, um, it's that empathy, right? I know what they're thinking and knowing what they're feeling,
Mm.
and I also did have some experience doing some work as a broker, but I didn't enjoy it because it's all cruxed on the sale or the exit. So if that person went through some changes, and made their business better, and they wouldn't want to sell, then as a broker, you don't really you don't really get paid. And that's, that's not the
Hmm.
broker's fault, just kind of the way that industry kind of works. But for me, like how fun would that be to have someone who's coming to me who's just as frustrated and overworked and exhausted as I was, and then you can help them get out of that. And again, now that I've done it, like you can do a lot faster than 4 or 5 years,
Hmm.
like when I did it. You can do a lot faster with someone, guiding you who can help you through that. And if they fell in love with their business again, how cool would that be? And they can just hold on to it as long as they want. Of course, with exit options, multiple, of them.
Right,
So
because the S of strategy means that you create strategy or optionality for the business, for yourself.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. And again, life will happen, things will happen. So you got
Hmm.
to be ready for things. And mysteriously, or maybe not so mysteriously, when you get to a point like that, and if people start noticing, one of the unexpected things that could happen is unsolicited offers. So instead of you
Hmm.
saying, I'm putting this business up, because often the businesses that are put up on the market are maybe the ones that are less sellable because, just like in real estate, the best deals happen off market, and same with small businesses. I mean, you
Hmm.
usually sell to someone, or someone takes a notice, or someone approaches you and says, hey, I like what you're doing here. And there could be a transaction that happens without it ever kind of going on the market per se.
So, to this method and the advisory service that you have, how could somebody listening here who maybe has a kind of a technical business and they like what you have to say and they're looking for somebody to help them get over this hurdle? They maybe hit this kind of inflection point. How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm online. You can find me at markianpergat.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. And those are probably the easiest ways. But yeah, I'm here in Ottawa. So if you're close by, I'm not too hard to get a hold of. And on the website, there's also some assessments and scores cards. So if you don't want to just reach out if you're not really quite sure yet or you're kind of thinking
Hmm.
about it, there's a few things you could do that maybe just you can learn a little bit more about your own little business as well. So I mean, there's a mini course that kind of takes you through kind of
Hmm.
some of the steps as well. So hopefully you can get some value before you're reaching out if you're not even sure if you need any help yet. So
Yeah, and so we've talked very broadly Main Street and blue collar businesses, but can you put some numbers around that? So if somebody's listening, they go, "Oh, that's my type of business, and those are my types of numbers." Like,
yeah,
is there a
absolutely.
revenue number or kind of thing that you can share?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess in the small business world, I mean, that to me that sort of means 0 to kind of 5 million top line revenue. It could mean up to maybe 10 million. And the reason why there's a bit of a range there is for a few reasons. Basically, if a private equity group was going to come and buy your business, they often don't buy something that's going to be less than 1 million in net earnings, let's say. So basically, anything underneath that, I would kind of say those are the kind of businesses that they need this type of help because they're not going
Hmm.
to have someone show up with like a massive check to kind of help them, let's say. So anything in that anything up to that range, I would say, and I also like being in that range because that's where you sort of have the most opportunity to pull some levers and really make some things really make some things happen and even like we're saying in the X factor, which is the micro M&A, you could take some of these businesses, maybe put them together, and then they can both enjoy a proper exit together now that they've put their value together, and then it gets on the map of a larger buyer pool that has the funds that they need to deploy. So yeah.
Right. And mindset being important to work with you, I'm going to surmise that there needs to be a growth mindset to come into this and be open to the ideas that are brought to the table to move to a next level. Would you say that would be pretty accurate to think?
Sure, but I mean, to be fair, I don't like those five, like those five categories in the exits
Mm.
method that I have here. It's not
Mm.
like it's a step by step that they have to do it. Like, it's not like you have to go and merge or buy another business. Like, that's absolutely not
Right.
a requirement. It's more of categories that when I meet a business owner, they're probably already going to have certain strengths that they're already doing extremely well, which we don't need to
Hmm.
focus on too much. But then there might be some things you want to maybe improve upon. So that'll be on a kind of one-to-one level. But yeah, it's not like they have to. It's not like they have to be open to doing certain things they're uncomfortable with. In fact, some of these conversations, like we were saying, I just want to open their eyes to maybe what's possible, so that they can say, "Wow, I didn't even know that was available to me." So
Hmm.
that's a good thing. But also, if they if they're one of these individuals that they're calling themselves a business, but they're really a self-employed person. It's a lot of the conversations are just kind of letting them know that and say, look, like, but again, that's not a bad thing. You can be just totally fine with that as
Hmm.
long as you understand that there's probably not going to be an exit at the end of that. Or you can kind of say, look, we can also change your business to make it not that way. I mean, that was my story.
Hmm.
A lot of that just comes down to, do they have the energy for that? Like, does that excite them? Do they even want to do it? If someone's so far gone, and because to be fair, most most small business owners, another reason why they don't exit, because they don't do the preparation, and they
Yeah.
postpone it forever because they think it's like an event that just happens the day you sign the documents, let's
Hmm.
say. So give themselves enough time. Like, don't make the call when they're saying, okay, I'm done, sell my business yesterday,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
so.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's why I'm sort of thinking like the growth mindset in order to have the benefit of what the di kind of they come to you, have a conversation, you have like a bit of a diagnosis, right? But in order to get to the next step, you have to then be willing to invest the time and energy to go through whatever that process is going to look like. And having a growth mindset is going to be helpful. Otherwise, it's just a kind of an awareness and a diagnosis.
And you're absolutely right, and
Yeah,
that's totally fair. Otherwise, it's
yeah,
sort of like, here's where I'm at. Can we sell, yes or no? And then it's done. If they're completely closed-minded, then hey, that's sort of
that's
the
what it is.
that's sort of how
Yeah.
the conversation ends. But
Hmm.
yeah, absolutely. Being open to things and learning stuff, and look, me every day, I'm a lifelong learner and just lo love learning things, and that's why it's nice to package them all together, in this kind of exits method where everything I've learned thus far, it's been nice to kind of categorize and kind of say, okay, what's really important? What do these owners really need, and what do they maybe not need, and just kind of piece it together that way. So, but you're right. The growth mindset and being open mind is extremely important, I would say.
Yeah. Um, we like to wrap things up, and I ask all my guests the same question here. Do you have sort of one final piece of fun, frank advice that you'd want to leave for business owner before we wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a perfect segue. The part I said just now was start before you're ready. That would be the fun, frank
Mm-hmm.
advice because,
Mm-hmm.
again, as soon as someone hears the word exit, they assume, okay, that's later. That's when
Yeah.
that's when I'm old, quote unquote, whatever that means. That's when I
Yeah.
want to retire. That's something that happens later. But really, exit prep is synonymous with business building, which is what you're doing from day one.
Right.
And it's just making your business better and better. So you can be on your first day just starting, and you're now, making a better asset, and that is exit prep already from day one. So thinking about as many of them as you possibly can before you're ready to go, and that's what's going to give you these options and give you that freedom
Mm-hmm.
and flexibility and space to do that, and the buyer desires. So that's what's going to attract potential acquirers. So yeah, the fun frank advice is start before you're ready, and even if you decide not to exit, again, exits is not what it's about. Like I said, if someone
Mm-hmm.
falls in love with their business again, or reappreciates it, I mean, that's a win. That's a huge win. I think just going through the process is important. Kind of, I guess, what would you say, an audit of it, and seeing
Mm-hmm.
where it's at, and seeing, okay, well, what's going well and what's not going well, and then continuing from there, making decisions once you have kind of a big picture view of it, let's say. But yeah, start before you're ready. That's the advice.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for coming to the podcast, Cash Rich Exit podcast, and sharing your experiences and how you're helping other business owners find that independence and build an asset rather than just a paycheck.
That's it. I love it. Thanks so much for having me, Colleen. Appreciate it.
Okay, take care. Start before you're ready. Build with intention. The work you do today sets the stage for the wealth, freedom, and legacy you want tomorrow. Don't be part of the 80% who shut down. Be part of the 20% who exits on purpose and on your terms. If Markian's message hit home, I invite you to connect with me, Colleen O'Connell-Campbell, on LinkedIn and book your one-on-one wealth gap analysis. Let's talk about your time frame, your value, and your visions. If you loved today's episode, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. It helps other founders like you find our show. If you're watching us here on YouTube, please subscribe. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'm looking forward to welcoming you back again soon. I'm Colleen O'Connell-Campbell, Wealth Advisor at RBC Dominion Securities and your host. TTFN. Ta-ta for now. Quick note, all opinions expressed by me and any guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of RBC Dominion Securities. This show is for information purposes only. Before acting on anything you hear or see here, consult a qualified professional. I'm a wealth advisor with RBC Dominion Securities, a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund.